welcome back to Rugged Mountain Homestead. My name is Sarah, and today we are in the kitchen. It is supposed to get cold here in the next week, and I want to be ready to make any type of soup that I so desire. So today we are going to get busy and make some homemade chicken broth. Now the first thing you may notice is that I have a bunch of bags on the counter, and I actually have 3 leftover chicken carcasses. I will buy a whole fryer and roast it or what have you, and then I will put it in a baggie and put it in the freezer so that when I have enough ready, I can go ahead and pull it out to make chicken broth with. Some of these are pretty picked to the bone, and I think there's 2 of these that still have some meat left on it, which is fine, because once the broth is finished, then I will just pull that meat, whatever's left of it, off, and then I can use it to actually make a chicken soup. So that's fine. So what we have here today are 3 chicken carcasses, a bag of onion peels. I do the very same thing with my onion peels. Anytime I'm chopping onions, I go ahead and I take the peels and those end pieces and I put them in a bag, put them in the freezer until I have a full bag that's ready to be used. The peels give the broth a really, really rich color, and nice to have that flavor in there. I also have a handful of carrots. They've been washed, but not peeled. It doesn't really matter if they're peeled. And so this is what I had, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw those in there. I have 6 cloves of garlic that have been crushed, a couple of bay leaves, and a 1/4 cup of dried celery. You don't have to use dried celery. You can use celery stalks, celery leaves, just kind of whatever you have left. The main thing about making the broth is that you use what you have on hand, what you like, and no matter how you do it, homemade chicken broth is the very best, because you are going to get all the nutrients from the bones, from the vegetables, to make a really nice rich broth in case there is illness in your home, or if you are prepping for a medical procedure. There's just so many good things and reasons why to have chicken broth on hand. So I have my roaster out, so let's go ahead and get started. And just to note, you don't have to have a roaster in order to make chicken broth. You can make it in the crock pot. You can make it in a Dutch oven on your stovetop. If you're going to be home and can watch it. Otherwise, you can have it in crock pot. I put it in my roaster just simply because 1, I have it, and 2, I make big batches of broth and I can it when I'm finished. So we're gonna go ahead and make it in the roaster today. Okay, so it's all pretty simple and straightforward. I did state that the chicken is frozen. I just pulled it out of the freezer since I have enough to make a big batch of broth now. It doesn't matter that it's frozen because it's going to end up boiling and it'll defrost. I'm just going to pull out the whole thing. As you'll notice, some of the bones are already pulled apart. They're from legs. There is still some meat on this one. There's the fat is still on here. So it'll be good. This one actually has a good bit on there. There's a whole leg right there. This will be nice because I will have plenty of meat left to make some chicken soup. Yeah, the first carcass I had really picked pretty well because I had made a leftover meal, and these other two are pretty good size. So this is great. And if you don't use whole fryers, you can use bones. You know, it's all part of it. So just use what you have. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put my carrots in. Just throw them in there. They're gonna move around anyway. I have 3 pretty good sized bay leaves. Let's see. 6 cloves of garlic. I went ahead and crushed these to go ahead and let the juices be able to escape easier. And I have a 1/4 cup of dehydrated celery stalk. And this is a 1/4 cup is probably equivalent to 2 or 3 stalks. I am out of black peppercorns, so I'm not going to use any, obviously. And then I'm just going to take my whole bag of onion peels and pieces and lay in here. And I had actually placed a couple bones in there. I did not realize that. You don't want to get any tags. Okay, that's pretty full. So now we want to add just enough water to cover everything up. And I have a gallon pitcher here. I'm sure it's going to take, whoa, I'm sure it's going to take more, but yeah. I'm going to put in one more. Let's see here. You may need to push it down just a little bit, as especially the onion peels have a tendency to float to the top. Okay, and I'm going to pour just a little splash of apple cider vinegar in here. This will not harm anything. It doesn't taint the meat. It'll actually help pull the marrow from the bone and just give us a nice, rich, nutrient-dense broth. So I have turned on the roaster to 250 degrees. I'll go ahead and place the lid on and let it do its magic. And there you have it. Friends, it really is just that simple. Anytime that you have the materials on hand to make it yourself, it's always better. Whether you are growing your own vegetables and have pulled them from your garden, whether you are raising your own chickens and stewing them and you have their carcasses, I do not. I have organic vegetables here and chickens. So even if you're not shopping for organic foods, any time that you can make it on your own and save the money, it's always better. You know, everything is so expensive right now. And so I firmly believe that any little bit helps, because especially as the holidays come upon us and, you know, we have a lot of things that call for chicken broth. It's always good to have homemade on hand. So I'm going to leave this in the roaster for probably 36 hours. Now, when I go to bed tonight, I'm probably going to turn it down to 200, and then I'll put it back up to 250 in the morning. So I'll just let that cook and simmer and do its thing for the next 36 hours, and then I will show you the next steps that lead up to canning our homemade chicken broth. Hi friends, well, it's the next day, so let's take a peek here at our broth and see how it's doing. Wow, look at that. That is beautiful. It smells really good too. It smells like Thanksgiving. It's a beautiful golden color, dark golden. That's probably from, besides the carcasses, all those beautiful onion peels. Wow. Well, I'm probably going to go ahead and let this go until tomorrow morning, maybe late morning, and then I will start to drain everything off. Once I have everything drained off, then I will go ahead and prepare my jars and get ready to can up some of this beautiful chicken broth. Okay friends, well, today is the day. The chicken broth has completely finished simmering and is absolutely gorgeous. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ladle it out of the roaster and into another container with cheesecloth on it, so we can just kind of get all the spices and everything out of the broth. Okay, and I'm also getting out this bowl because I'm going to be putting the chicken carcass in here, and then when I pick the meat off, I'll just keep it in here separate. This is actually the most difficult part for me. Sometimes Dean has helped me in the past just because it's such a large amount. This roaster is 18 quarts, so I'm hoping that I will get 12 quarts out of this today. Okay, so as you can see here, I basically just have a pitcher and some cheesecloth clipped on top. This is easiest for me. I just ladle it in here, and that way I can pour the broth into a larger stock pot. Okay, in an effort to make things a little easier on myself, I'm going to just take a slotted spoon and try and get just some of the onion peels and bones and things like that into this pot. And then that way there'll be less to strain through the cheesecloth. And I can also get the pot closer to the roasting pan. And then what I'll do is, with what I'm disposing of into this pot, I will just take down to my compost bin. Okay, so now I feel reasonably confident that I've gotten all the big things out of the roaster oven. I have this pot that's just full of the vegetable scraps and some bones where some of the chicken just fell off the bone. And then I put another bowl on the other side of the roaster, and when I got out pieces of chicken, I just went ahead and dropped them in this bowl, and then I will pick this off the bone after I'm finished doing the broth and have it for chicken soup. Now, there may be some little tiny bits in the broth, and if that, I'm going to strain everything, but if that makes it into the broth, little tiny bits, it's okay. It's not a big deal. So this is always tricky. This is always the tricky part. And when Dean has helped me in the past, he's helped me basically because this is really heavy, this roaster with the broth in it. And he'll lift it and pour some in here for me. But I do not have that type of strength. So I'm just gonna move it over, set this pitcher right next to it, and ladle it in. That way, when it is full, it'll be easy just to pour into my stock pot. Okay, now if I didn't mention it before, this cheesecloth that I have clipped on to the top of the pitcher, it is doubled. I just took it right out of the package and cut it to size, layering it double to get as much as I possibly could. Okay. You can see there's a lot of spices and some celery pieces and just some sediment. So now that I ladled it all into the pitcher, I still have another one to go. It's not, this isn't everything, but it is full. And I don't know if you can see inside there. I don't want to lean it over. It's pretty full. There is some fat on top, which is fine. If there's too much, then I will skim it off, but a little bit of fat in your broth, it doesn't hurt a thing. And so I'm just going to pour it into my stock pot right here on the stove, and I'm just going to keep it on warm. That is a beautiful color. Nice. Looks really nice. Okay, and that's a 1 gallon pitcher. So I would love to be able to get 2 more out of this. So I'm just going to line this with a new piece of cheesecloth and just repeat the process. Okay, so here's our 2nd gallon. Okay, so we're definitely not going to get 3 gallons out of here today, and that's probably because we had 3 chicken carcasses at the bottom, so it took up a little bit more space. But I do have some more, probably about a quart. And so I'll go ahead and get that out, put that in the stock pot, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so while that chicken broth is on the stove heating through, I'm just going through the chicken pieces that I pulled, or the chicken carcasses that I pulled out of the roaster, and I'm just pulling the meat off, trying to pull off any skin or fat and throw it in the compost pile. Okay, so I've pulled all the meat off those carcasses. This is a 1 gallon Ziploc size freezer bag, and I take out almost half. So this is enough for me to make chicken soup, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with this chicken here. In the meantime, I'm just going to stick it in the freezer and get to work on the chicken broth now. Okay, I wasn't sure at first if I was going to show this part of my process or not, but we've completed making the chicken broth. It is finished. It's in this stock pot, this one right here, keeping warm. But now is the canning process, and I'm always a little hesitant to do anything canning on camera because there's so many different variations. You know, everybody has opinions. but I try to follow very, very safe canning practices. I have read the guidance, and so I'm going to be canning this chicken broth up today. And here is how it's done. Okay, so I put in 1 gallon of water into my pressure canner so that it can be nice and not quite hot, but very, very warm. And I set my jars down in there after I had washed my jars in hot soapy water and set them down in here so that they're nice and hot. So I'm just going to pull them out now. So I'm just going to take them out and set them on this towel here. These are canning jars that I will be using, but I have not heated them up yet. They've just been washed. Now these jars are hot, so I am using a canning jar lifter to get them out of the pot. Okay, now while these jars are hot, I'm going to go ahead and just set one on my towel here and put my funnel in there. So now I can ladle some hot broth into the jar. Normally I use like a little pan or something to do this, but there's a lot going on up on the stove. And I usually use that burner right there that Dean has his kettle on. It's just slightly whistling and waiting for him to make a cup of coffee. Now for broth, according to my guidance, you want to leave 1 inch of head space. And that is going to be up to the very bottom of the threads, where it starts to thread on the jar. Just up to the very bottom of that is 1 inch. All 7 quart jars are in the canner now. The canner had 1 gallon of water in it. There's a line on the inside that tells you where your water level needs to be. But once you put your jars down in there, it kind of raises that up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put the lid on the canner. I've already checked the vent pipe, make sure I can see through that when I hold it up to the light, so it's not knowing that it's not clogged up or anything like that. My seal is nice on it. There's no cracking or anything like that. So I'm going to take my canner lid, line it up with the arrow from the lid onto the handle, and get it set down in there. There we go. Lock that in place. Turn this around where I can see it. This is my pressure gauge. And then I'm going to turn the heat up high on here because I have to let the steam vent out of this pipe for 10 minutes before I can put the weight on it and build it through the proper pressure. So that's still going to take a little while because this is a large pot, has water in it. And so when it comes to steam, usually this plug will come up in the back to let me know that some pressure is building, but this will vent for 10 minutes. and then I will put my weight on. So I'll see you guys back here in a few minutes when the canner starts to vent steam. Okay, so this has been venting for 10 minutes now. I'm going to take this weighted pressure regulator. It is weighted heavier than when we lived back east because due to the altitude, I need to pressure can at 15 pounds of pressure instead of 11. So we'll go ahead and put this on here and let the pressure build. Now once on this gauge we reach 15 pounds of pressure, I will turn the heat back so it can stay there consistently, and we will process these quart jars of chicken broth for 25 minutes. During this process, I'm going to be watching the canner gauge very carefully as we do not want it to exceed the 15 pounds, but we do not want it to go under either. Okay, I'm going to start to turn the heat back just a little bit so that it can maintain pressure now that we are at 15 pounds. As you can also see, the pressure regulator is doing its little dance where it wasn't earlier, but now that it's built up to the pressure, to the amount of weight, it'll dance on there while the canning process is taking place. I can start the timer now for 25 minutes. Okay, so the safety valve right there is now flush with the lid, the canner lid. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the weighted regulator off. You're not going to hear any changes. And just let it sit like this for 5 minutes and then we'll take the lid off. Now, as you can see, hopefully you can see, the broth is still very much boiling inside of these jars. But oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. Look at that. The color is fantastic. And I have a few jars ready to be loaded in and to go again. But before I get started in loading the canner back up again, just a quick chat about the homemade chicken broth. Homemade any kind of broth, vegetable, beef, whatever. It is easier just to go and buy it off the store shelf. It is a lot more money, so you do have that there. But I also like the control that I have over top of knowing what's going into my food. Because that is strictly chicken, the spices, the seasonings, and a little bit of vinegar, which you can't taste at all. And then we got some great meat off of the rest of those carcasses. Now I understand that not everyone can get local pasture-raised chicken, but you know, we do the best we can with what we have. So if you want to make some chicken broth, just get the chicken out of your freezer, or you know, pick some up at the store, whatever option you have available to you, because anytime you have the opportunity to save some money or to make it healthier for you. It's not, this broth is not watered down. You know exactly what's in it. There's no preservatives. There's no artificial flavors. There's just nothing but 100% goodness in every jar. That kind of sounds like a commercial. So do what you can with what you have right there in front of you. The feeling of satisfaction is so great. Knowing that I have this on hand now, I'm going to have 10 quarts when I finish those last 3. And that's going to probably get us through the winter. Yeah, it should. And if not, I have 2 more fryer chickens in the freezer and I'll just make more broth. So thank you for hanging out with me in the kitchen today up on Rugged Mountain Homestead. I hope you enjoyed making chicken broth with me today and that you try it. try and make some of your own. If you don't want to make a huge amount in an 18-quart roaster, use your crock pot. It's all the same directions. You could even use it on a pot on your stove. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care.